It is my pleasure to introduce to our audience a distinguished doctor in political science and economics, Dr. Sagi Barmak, who actually was born in the city of Berdichev in Ukraine and came when he was 3 years old to Israel.
So first of all, thank you for having me. I look forward for our conversation. And we can talk about the importance of conservatives' idea, conservative vision to the Israeli society, and especially for young leaders in Israel who want to promise a bright future and a prosperous future for the Jewish state.
So your ideas are very, very relevant, not just for Israel, but also for America. But just few words maybe about yourself, because I understand that you and your family came from the place where communist and socialist ideas were practiced. How did it work for them?
Yeah, so my family wasn't communist. They weren't exposed, I will say, to a liberal or a capitalist ideas. Yes. So they had this modern inclination, on the one end, to be very suspicious of the state, yes, and of the political parties, but on the other end, they were, like a moderate socialist. So they came to Israel during the 70s, yes, and they came to a really small town in the north of Israel called Carmiel. And I grown up there, and only later in my life I moved, to Jerusalem, to Tel Aviv, the major cities. So yes, it was a very interesting experience for me in Israel, and of course for my parents as a new olim.
You served in the army. What was your army experience?
Yeah, so I served 3 years in the army, like every regular Israeli. Then I was an officer in the artillery force and in the medical corps. And so I finished my army service after 4 years. And I went to study history, the history of ideas, the history of political thought. And I very quickly came to notice the major importance of the American history, and especially of the history of the conservative movement in the States. So I wrote my PhD about the conservative movement, and especially about the neo-conservative movement, which was led by major Jewish figures in the States. So it was very interesting for me.
Which names you would like to quote?
The most prominent of them were figures like Irving Kristol and Sidney Hook, Norman Podhoretz. So all of them were Jewish, and they were all lefties in the beginning. But during the 60s, they understood that the left left them. I mean, there was some kind of really radicalization in the American left that made them to rethink their basic ideas. So in a strange way, they became prominent conservative thinkers.
Well, Churchill said that someone who was not liberal when he was young doesn't have a heart, but someone who did not become a conservative has no mind, right? So therefore, the process was described. The process was described by Churchill. But interesting, why after Israeli army service, when you defended Israel in assuring safety and security of the Jewish people here for 4 years, why did you just go to something that most Israelis do? They go to either business or high tech or something, political science. Like, why do you go to political science and political thought? It's so interesting, of course, but do you think it is significant for the safety and security of Israel, actually?
Yeah, so we known in the world as the tech nation, and it's very important, and I'm pro-business, and I think that every Israeli who goes to business or try to start a business or go to do some productive work, it's really important, and actually they drive our economy forward. But the Israeli excellence is not only in the business sphere. So in Israel, we have really the best researchers in the humanities, yes, in philosophy, in history, in political science, in economics, in philosophy, etc. So personally, I always loved books and history and ideas. So I really think that ideas are important. They shape reality. They can change people's lives. And we have responsibility to make an ideological climate that is very responsive and positive toward, for example, business. So it's not enough from a, let's say, a public policy perspective, yes, to have people who want to start a business, yes. It's very important that the intellectual elite that don't go to start business understand the major importance, yes, for example, of free enterprise. So I think that we actually, in a sense, complement those entrepreneurs that go and start businesses.
It's such an American idea, actually. I remember that President Reagan used to say that if you think that the government is a solution, then you don't understand that the government is a problem.
Yes.
Maybe one example, just would like you to comment on that. I remember that, I think it was 2012 or 14, when there were demonstrations against, we call it in Hebrew, Yoker HaMichya, that everything is very expensive. And what made people really angry is that the Israeli yogurt that was sold in Berlin and Germany for half price for Germans, after transportation, after all the, chain of, people.
Supply, yeah.
Right, and still you sell the same yogurt in Israel for double price. Like, people went insane. And I think that one of the solutions that the government or whatever they did is they started controlling prices. But what happened is that the big companies simply passed this control to the small companies. And the smaller companies collapsed, and they were purchased by the bigger ones. And instead of create more competition that brings prices down, the government control of prices actually created even stronger monopoly on economics. That the core reason why the prices are so high in Israel. Is that something makes sense?
Yes. So look, Israel is a very expensive state. Yes, we have serious problem in Israel. Housing prices are way up, and if you go to the supermarket, things are expensive, and it's a serious challenge for young couples. So I totally understand the anger, and we don't need to be dismissive about it. But the main difference is that most of the people and most of the left, the intellectuals from the left, they think that our major problem is corporate greed. Okay, so there is the bad guys. Who are the bad guys? The bad guys are the capitalists, yes, who want to make a lot of money, so they raise prices up, yes, and all we need to do is call for the nanny state. Yes, the state is good, the regulators are good, the politicians are wonderful, and they can look after the consumer interest. Now, this is a very naive and wrong way to think about the issues. Yeah? Our biggest problem is government preventing freedom of trade. Okay, is government make it very hard for business to flourish. Government controls entire sectors in the economy. Yes. We have a really high taxation in Israel. Our public sector is very insufficient. It's very not competitive. So what we really need to do in Israel in order to make the life here more prosperous is to get the government out of the economy. So yes, and you mentioned Reagan. Yes, in the real sense, the government in Israel is the problem, and I think it's also in the United States.
So big government is a problem, and the conservative movement in America at least aims to actually for smaller government and more freedom in economy and for more, freedom for citizens. And what is your vision for Israel?
Yeah, so actually, I think that Israelis can learn a lot from the American experience. So I love to talk about, for example, the Jeffersonian Ideal. Yes. So if we will take the founding fathers of the United States, yes, they had a wonderful ideal, yes, for how we need to run states. So the American founders talked about limited government. Yes, they weren't anarchists. Yes, government is very important. Yes, we need a coercive power to protect our lives, our freedom, and our property. Yes, so government is very important, but it needs to be limited. Yes, because it's very dangerous. Government it guns, it's prisons, it's not benevolent despot. So first of all, limited government. Second, personal freedom. Freedom is great. Yes, so everyone understands why, for example, freedom of speech is very important. And everybody understands why, for example, freedom of religion is very important. Yes. So, but my emphasis is that economic freedom, yes, is no less of importance, yes, for the individual. Yes, this is a safeguard for our liberties, and only under economic freedom, yes, people can better their condition. Yes. So freedom comes, it's important to emphasize, with personal responsibility. Yes, if you are free, you need to be responsible for your choices. Yes, and another aspect that is very important is the importance of private property. Yes, people should have to keep the fruits of their labor. Yes, it's basic. Yes, so I would say that the ideal of personal freedom, strong private property, small government, and strong communities, strong families, yes, strong national solidarity, yes, is the best vision that we can offer to young Israelis.
Interesting. When you speak about strength, in Jewish tradition, we have an expression of King David, Hashem oz le'amo item, Hashem will give strength and bless Jewish people, his people, with peace. So we see the concept of peace through strength is that the best way to assure peace is not to project weakness. As we see now, right. Current American government projects weakness after leaving Afghanistan, and you see what's happening right now with the crisis with Ukraine. So how your conservative ideas project? Do they have a projection in our policies or political reality with our Palestinian friends and Arab states in general?
Yeah, so I think that a major aspect of the conservative vision is it's not only limited government, but in a sense, a strong government. But what I mean by strong government, yes, is a strong military, yes, a strong defense force that could protect the Jewish homeland. So I think that at the bottom of the line, yes, conservatives are very realist. Yes, we don't have, we reject utopian solutions. Yes, for example, yes, if you only give them land, so they will leave us alone. Yes, or if you only apologize for your past mistakes, yes, they will leave you alone. So we are not buying it. Okay, so I think that the best way that Israel can make allies in the Middle East, yes, is through strength. But in order for us to be military successful, we need to have strong economy. Okay, we need human capital. Yes, the Jewish brain. Yes, that will make us prosperous economically, and then yes, we could, let's say, have technology, yes, and a modern army, and be very strong, yes, and then some of the Arab nations will want to have business with us. yes, will take us very seriously. So this is the conservative vision.
So we see actually it's happening as we see the Abraham Accords. By Abraham Accords, we see that is in reality. And you know what? Once Natan Sharansky came to America, I interviewed him on my TV program. And I asked him a question. I said, Natan, he at the time was, I believe, Vice Prime Minister of Israel. And I said to him, Yitzhak Rabin was a great warrior of the Israeli army, Prime Minister of the country. How did they make such a huge mistake of Oslo agreements? Like, what do you understand? Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres, and how did they do this? And so he said, you know, they really believed in the other side. They really believed that Arafat means peace. So this is what you said, that the conservative movement doesn't think like wishfully. It's not wishful thinking.
Yes. It's not wishful thinking. No. It's very realistic. We have a very pessimistic view of human nature. Okay, it's a very important aspect. I mean, people can be great, people can be generous, people can be awesome, but yes, it's only happening under very special circumstances of, for strong solidarity and strong community ties. Yes. But if we look on the international scene, I think that the conservative vision is very Hobbesian. Yes, Hobbesian in the sense of Thomas Hobbes. Yes, war of all against all. So the international scene, it's not a camping trip of Kumbaya. Yes, it's different players. Yes, who look after power and want to make progress on. Swallow otter and weak players. So I think that this is really the conservative vision, very realistic.
It also reminds me, I think another professor, Kahneman, who was a Nobel Prize winner, and he's the author of a famous book, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the amazing ideas that he spoke about, it's about fears of optimism, like people are more scared and therefore the market reacts to fears, or market reacts on gains and wanting to gain. So the fear to lose is greater than the fear to gain, because the fear to gain may be intellectual, but the fear to lose is fear which is fast. Thinking fast means thinking emotionally. Yeah. One of the ideas he thinks about, nevertheless, that we wish for the good. And therefore, it's very good that on your team, you have someone who's a pessimist, who will always point out to some difficulties or obstacles that you will be on your road to success. And without having this person, having this pessimistic view, you may fail. And actually, one Rebbe used to say, I think one of the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, why do you have two eyes? Because with one, you see something good in others, and with the other eye, you need to see something bad to improve in yourself.
Very nice. And I can add to that. I think that many conservatives understand that we will not get another chance. I mean, if we will screw this time up, okay, there will not be a third homeland. I mean, it's now or never. So so it's very important.
It's very, very important. Actually, many American Jews, many of my friends say exactly the same words. My last question to you: Russian Jews that came from basically a socialist country, are they aiding to your conservative thinking? Do you think they're an asset, or the Russian Jews need to be also very much educated and understanding capitalism?
Yeah, so I would say two things. First of all, that the Russian integration in Israel, it's a wonderful success story. I mean, if you look of the different people that came from different countries, everybody looks at the Russians, yes, as a major success, yes, of people who fully integrated in the Israeli economy and politics and the civil society. So really, it's great. The added value of the Russian immigrants is immense. I mean, I cannot imagine how would Israel would look like without the I think it's million Russians who came to Israel. So this is the first point. The second point that I will add is that I think that many of the people who came from Russia have a really healthy conservative instinct because they knew the other options, yes, that were not very sympathetic. So yes, I think that the sons and daughters of the immigrants to Israel are potential conservative leaders in Israel. I will be happy to teach them and talk with them.
Wonderful. So you're actually doing it already today, and you're an amazing educator, and we want to continue hearing from you. That was something that I would say in Hebrew, hikirut. How to say it in English? Hikirut. That was today. I wanted
introduction.
It was introduction. We really wanted to know you as a person, you about your patience, you about how you see the Jewish state. So I want to thank you so much from bottom of my heart for this amazing interview, and we're looking forward to work with you and learn from you a lot. So thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
All the best to you.
All the best. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you and shalom.
Bye.